What would you say to somebody who's coming across your work for the first time?
Mouth breathing is a disaster for your health. 11 years ago, when all of my respiratory problems that I had quite a few, suddenly went away once I learned how to breathe properly.
How much truth actually is there in mewing, and is it just something that silly, insecure teenagers do?
It is not important for young kids to mew. It's important for young kids to have proper oral posture. These are two completely different things. You will never resolve anxiety unless you get control of your breathing. When you're constantly over-breathing, you're sending your brain signals that you are stressed out, and then your brain reacts by having you breathe too much. Learning how to breathe deep and slowly through your nose can really transform your health.
This is the Loaf Podcast. Welcome back to the bakery, everyone, where we break bread with the world's finest. Today, we're here with James Nestor. He's a renowned journalist and best-selling author of the book Breath, The New Science of a Lost Art. James, thank you so much for being here with us today. How are you feeling?
Thanks a lot for having me. Feeling pretty good.
Cool. So just a little introduction for our listeners about the kind of person you are and the kind of things you believe. You've said before that you're a skeptic. And me personally as well, hearing about your work for the first time, I was a little bit skeptical, as I believe many people can be, about the idea that breath can be such a powerful thing when it seems so simple: oxygen in, carbon dioxide out. What would you say to somebody who's coming across your work for the first time to sort of begin to give them the idea that breath could be something quite powerful for our health and for our mental health as well?
Well, by the nature of my job, I have to be a skeptic. Right? I'm a science journalist, and so I hear something that piques my curiosity, and my job is to go out and learn as much about it as I can. And part of that process is to measure it. So measuring things is a great stick in which we can sort of figure out if something is real or not. And if measurements continue to add up and end up being the same over various repeated experiments, then that's where the truth is. That's where the data is. So, personally, I will have to say that my experience into breathing and my apprehension, which was very strong, was sort of shattered around 11 years ago when all of my respiratory problems that I had quite a few, suddenly went away once I learned how to breathe properly. And once I was introduced to proper biomechanics and posture. And I thought this was interesting. I wonder if this would also happen for other people. And it turns out hundreds of thousands of other people have had the same experience, millions at this time. And so that interested me enough to spend many years researching it.
Yeah, you in terms of research and the way in which you kind of had this this experiential belief. So in the sense that you believed it because you experienced it. You begin your book Breath by describing an experiment where you're forced to mouth breathe for 2 weeks. Could you, for our listeners, maybe explain that experience and what you learned, through that lived experience about how important nose breathing actually is?
I had talked to several experts in the field, and we know that nasal breathing is far superior than mouth breathing. There's absolutely no debate about that among people who study this stuff. We've known this for decades and decades, so no controversy there. But what hadn't been done is human studies looking at how quickly the damage from mouth breathing would come on. And we haven't done those studies because A, there was no funding for them, and B, a lot of people didn't want to run them for ethical reasons, because they didn't want to purposely inflict pain upon people, which is what happened with the chief of rhinology research at Stanford. When I asked him, I said, you're at Stanford, man. You're at the top of your field. Why don't you do a study? Even 20 people would be interesting. He said he couldn't. So I volunteered, and one other person volunteered for a 2-person experiment. And what we were doing wasn't like trying to establish new science so much as we were to personally experience what the science had already told us, that mouth breathing is a disaster for your health. And I felt that within a couple of days, and we have the measurements to prove it.
What was that like?
Oh, it's terrible. we knew it was going to be awful, right? So there's no bones about it. And some of my friends were like, oh, this is like a supersize me thing where you're eating McDonald's for 30 days. But it really wasn't, because if you look at the amount of people who are mouth breathing constantly, especially during allergy season, you realize we were just putting ourselves into this position that so many other people knew. That the difference was we were measuring it the whole way through. So our sleep took an enormous hit. Athletic performance took a hit. We couldn't focus, dry mouth all the time. I mean, it was awful. Blood pressure skyrocketed. So on and on and on, as advertised from all of the previous studies. Don't do it. And the thing that's sad is so many people are walking around mouth breathing, wondering why they have chronic migraines, wondering why their blood pressure is just through the roof all the time, wondering why they're getting constant cavities, and no one's telling them it's the pathway in which they breathe.
Ever shown up to the beach with a big bush, getting rejected left, right and centre, so you have to walk away with your pubes between your legs? Then get yourself a Manscaped and rule the beach. Wear your shorts with no shame. Get the Performance Package 5.0 Ultra now with a discount code LOAF to get a full 20% off, so that your baguette leaves no crumbs.
Hey guys, hope you enjoyed the clip from that episode. If you'd like to check out the full interview with James Nestor, you can click right here. Don't forget to like and subscribe and leave your comments below.